But if you read the original Declaration of, well, if you read the Declaration of Independence is, we tend to think of it as like a liberty document, right? So we talk about that first stanza that I just said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. But if you read it in entirety, what it actually is a succession document. It is a document where the colonists are listing all the crimes that the British have committed against them and why they are deserving to break off, secede, and become their own nation. That's what it is, the listing of the crimes. And the way that they did it back then, so today, like if you read a newspaper, we put the most important news on the top. But back in the colonial era, they put the most important thing at the bottom. They didn't have nothing else to do, so they know you're gonna read the whole thing, unlike now. So the things that were most important, they put at the very bottom, right? And so in the original Declaration, at the very bottom, Thomas Jefferson lists what he considers the worst crime that the English have committed, and that's that they forced the institution of slavery on the white colonists. Y'all remember that part? No? They don't. Okay, so that's because when he puts in there that slavery was a crime forced by the British king against African people who did not deserve it, and he took it back to his white colonist friends, they were like, what the hell? We're not signing this shit. Right? I mean, think about it. You are wanting to found a nation where the wealthiest colonies in the 13 colonies were Virginia and South Carolina, and these were the slave colonies. Virginia was the oldest, the wealthiest, the largest of the colonies, but 40% of the population of Virginia was enslaved. And all these founders, right, we think about, I swear to God I'm gonna answer your question. We think about the mythology of the American Revolution is that the American Revolution is a northern phenomenon, right? That the heart of the revolution is Philadelphia, and it's Boston with the Boston Tea Party. Thomas Jefferson did write the Declaration in Philadelphia, but where was Thomas Jefferson from? What was Thomas Jefferson's job?
Slave. Yeah.
He what? That was his job, y'all, right? So we're told that he was a planter. This was a euphemism. So we engage in a lot of euphemism to avoid the horrors of our history, but Thomas Jefferson didn't plant anything. He forced other human beings through torture and violence to plant for him, which gives him the money and the time to read all these books about Enlightenment ideas and to craft these words. But he was a Virginian who owned more than 200 people when he wrote those words of freedom. So when he writes these words about the greatest crime is slavery, and he takes it to the colonists understand that they can't start a new nation without slavery, because financially they need slavery. And so they strike that passage. And instead, the only mention about slavery in the Declaration is about insurrections. So the crime that Thomas Jefferson writes about is that the British are stoking insurrection amongst the enslaved. Right? So they are telling enslaved people, fight on our side and we will free you. And the colonists are saying, fight on our side, and then, well, that's all we're gonna do for you is let you fight, right? They didn't promise freedom, and so most black people in the Revolutionary War fought on the side of the British. So I say that to say, these fears of insurrection, these fears of rebellion were happening because black folks were constantly rebelling. And they weren't just sitting back, watching the wait to see what are these white folks gonna do in this war. They were like, this is an opportunity for us because we're loyal to freedom. And so they were running away, they were plotting constantly. And the odds, you have to think about, we were never more than 20% of the population. So the odds of us being able to successfully rebel were almost none. You were outnumbered. And yet we still did it. Constantly. So that moves me to the present question. This is what I'll say. Carefully. I believe that black people have a right to every form of resistance that any other human being has the right to.
Yes, ma'am.
I will not call for violence.
Yes, ma'am.
But I also don't ever put anything off the table depending on what do you need to resist.
Yes.
And we understand this, right? We are supporting 2 wars right now. With American tax dollars and American armaments, because we understand that people have a right to defend themselves. So I think that we have to be resisting in any way that we feel the times call for us to resist. I think the way that we resist now, I mean, you again, think about language. So during the George Floyd protests, were those riots or were those rebellions?
Yes. That's good.
What language we choose determines how we think about these things, how we think about the morality of the protests, how we think about the ethics of them, if it's right or not, and what type of force should we use against people who are engaging in protest. So I think resistance will always take a lot of forms. There will be resistance that comes through the pen.
Yes.
There will be resistance that comes through people taking to the streets. There will be resistance that comes in a state like where we are in Louisiana, hopefully, right, by using and harnessing your collective power at the ballot.
Yes.
Because there are far more black folks in this state than what your politics make it seem like.
That's right.
Right? So it's resisting in having the courage, Dr. Geary, to hold this conversation.
That's right.
Right? When a lot of places will not, because this book is being banned, because they are deeming our history to be controversial. They are telling our kids, you can't learn AP Black history, but you can learn AP European history, AP Asian history, American history.
Right.
So we have to resist across the full spectrum.
Absolutely.
I don't believe, we can think about violence, and the way that reason that violence won't usually work for us is we're 13% of the population.
Yes.
Right? So.
And they seem to enjoy killing us.
We're not going to win through violence alone. But I also think we don't have to just allow ourselves to be brutalized and always turn the other cheek either.
Gotcha.
Don't put that up, y'all.
I've been, this is my 30th year on faculty at Clark Atlanta University, right? And
wow.
And every semester, inevitably, some student comes to my class and starts asking me questions about the Declaration of Independence and our founding fathers. And I always correct that, right? Because that's just not my daddy who did that. And I think that kind of correction is very important. Because if not, I think it's sort of what you were alluding to a moment ago. Subconsciously, without a certain level of self-love, our children want to claim some people and give credence to some folks, right? But really, right, as you were saying, our mothers and fathers, they were in the room.
Yeah.
They just weren't at the table, right?